Hello and welcome back to another Decker tutorial. Today we're going to make the game of Tic Tac Toe, which is a game where you try to get 3 of these little symbols in a row if you've never played it. It's a pretty common game, pretty easy to master, but I'm making this series for my 8-year-old daughter and this is what she wanted to make. If you want to follow along, there should be a link in the description to this website where you can actually grab this deck, which includes Decker itself. And from there you can find the Decker website and all the information you would need to make your own decks outside of this tutorial. And let's get started. The first thing we want to do is draw the shapes. And Decker is actually a complete drawing system. It's got all kinds of tools for drawing and manipulating graphics, only some of which we're going to look at today. And right here, these are some of the menu options that I find make Decker a little more comfortable for doing this kind of drawing. So first thing is to turn on toolbars. If you're in the web version like this and you don't have the option to put on toolbars, it's because Decker dynamically sizes your browser's shape. This is the actual size of the Decker default card. You can change that. When you make it a little bit bigger, it scales to fill up that screen, but it prevents you from having any space on the side for the toolbars. So you got to make it even bigger still. And about this much should enable the toolbar menu. So now you can turn those on and they live outside of the card. So that's the first one, Decker toolbars. The second one is once you have the toolbar, you have these tools for drawing on the back of the card, which is what we're going to use to draw these shapes. And you have the option to draw in any number of little patterns. You have to set the fill if you want to fill in the these. You can draw circles and arbitrary polygons, which you can turn into a closed shape. And then you can enable color. Once you have one of these tools selected, there'll be a style menu and you can select the fill and stroke color for these shapes. So the stroke is the outside and then the fill is the middle. And these include the colors. So let's go with green today. You can also pick a brush. Here's the default brush here. Then if you pick one of these, you have a bigger brush. It looks like I want to use the pen tool. There's also an undo. So then the other thing is to make it easier to draw really exact shapes like this, you can use the grid overlay and snap to grid. So under the view menu, you can say show grid overlay and you get these little dots. You can use the grid and scale to set the spacing. And fat bits is a way to basically zoom in. So if you hold down the control key and you click on something, you zoom in really quickly and then you can click again to zoom out. And you can also use the arrow keys to zoom it around and you hit shift and arrow keys to zoom around a little faster, pan around, I suppose. And then you can draw whatever you want to draw. I think it's a lot easier for me if I use the grid, especially for shapes that I want to be fairly symmetrical. So I'm going to do that. For a circle, you drag from the top right corner and you hold down shift to make it a perfect circle. It looks like I do not have the snap to grid on, so snap to grid. And if I do that, now I can just drag out evenly in the vertical and horizontal directions and I get a circle. So anyway, that's a quick tour of the drawing tools. There's lots more you can do, but you can make your own brushes and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and pick brown, make a brown X. I didn't pick it. I picked the fill, so I want the stroke. So the style I was using is I used a big brush to draw, and then I use a smaller brush in the middle to, let's make it yellow or orange or something, to draw like a fill. But another thing you can do along those lines, so if you say fill, the fill is also the background color. So if you select something here and hit delete, it leaves a brown box because I have fill as brown. But if I do this again with white selected as fill, then it makes it clear. And I'm going to draw a green circle, right? Let's do a green circle. That is not green at all because I picked fill again, stroke and green, and that again. And then another thing you can do is you can say edit tight selection and add outline. But I think you want to do that with, let's say, a different color. Edit, add outline. There you go. Okay, so that drew the 1 pixel outline around it. So I did it twice and I got this. Let's even just add another outline to this one. Since I kind of like that look, I think I have the dark brown and I'll just say edit, add out. I'm happy with those. And then when I click next, it will not copy these. I need to copy them manually. So I'm going to go ahead and edit, copy image. It copies widgets. It does not copy the background. So there we go. We're going to now do the work of extracting these and turn them into widgets. So edit, paste, you'll see what a widget is if you don't know yet. So it wants to use my clipboard. I'm allowing that. There we go. And notice that it's overriding the background here with white pixels. But if I use style transparency, Now the white pixels in my selection that I'm pasting become transparent. So that's a neat little feature. And that's why it says on the previous side to use a white background. Okay. All right. So now we're going to copy each one of these individually and we're going to turn them into widgets. And we're going to say tool select, grab it. And I like to do edit tight selection. So that cuts it down to the bare minimum. So there's no white space around it. And then we're going to do edit, cut, or copy the image. So we can just, I'll do one of each. So I'll cut it. So now it's gone. Now if you paste, all you can do is paste it back into the image, right? Which is what we just did. But if we go to the widget tool, we can say edit paste as new canvas. And now you can see it's got a little lock here. This is a widget that is like above the page. I'm going to click on it and make it draggable. And then also do widgets show transparent. And so now we get that same behavior where we can now have a transparent widget. So I think that's kind of nice. You can just draw your assets directly in Decker. Use these colors, or you can add your own colors. That's something we'll cover some other day. And yeah, it's pretty easy. So let's do the same thing real quick for this. I said I do one of each. So I'll copy this one, edit, paste as new canvas. Let's see, run. Yeah, so we could have done this as well. I can run the script, and this is just a way to copy the images. If I had read that, I wouldn't have to go back and copy and paste. So I can run it now. See, it copied everything, the whole background from the previous card. All it's doing is just saying deck cards, draw the shapes, because that was the name of the previous card. Draw the shapes. You can also see it up here in widget mode. And then this particular widget just shows the name of the card. So we can grab it from the dictionary of cards, and we call it for previous. And then now we can just say card, which is this card, this current card, and set the image to the previous image, previous.image. So the card named previous has an image that gives you the background and whatever. And there's the edit thing. Okay, so now that we have these widgets on the next screen, I've gone ahead and drawn the background for you, but you can, of course, use those same drawing tools to change this grid to whatever you want. And yeah, so I marked this one, this particular canvas widget, as being draggable. So now I can drag it around. This one is not. It's also not transparent. But what we can do is make them transparent. So here's another way to do that programmatically. For each widget in the current card, the dictionary of widgets, if that widget's type is a canvas, so right now there are 3 widgets on this thing. So if I go to widgets order, I can see the blue thing at the bottom is a widget, right? So we can move that around and whatever. So in order to not do anything with this thing, I want to filter down to only the canvases. And that's what this line does, which goes from here to the end down here, the first end. Second end is for each. Each is a loop. So basically loop through all the widgets. If it's a canvas, then do this stuff. Set the border to 0. So if we can set it to 1, see the opposite. So they'll have a little border around them, right? And then make it locked. If they're not locked, then what you can do, I kind of don't want to, maybe I'll make a copy of one. If I make it unlocked, then I can actually draw on it when I go here. Although I guess that does not work if it's draggable. So click on this widget's properties, and then it draggable here, border here. And now if I go into interact mode, you can draw on this. So by default, you can always draw on a canvas, and it has its own brush. So these settings don't do anything with it. But of course we want to get rid of that one. All right. So anyway, we want it to be locked. So you can't draw on it. Draggable, so you can move it around, and then transparent. And that's what we want. And then I had a border on these things. Like I had previously drawn a box in an earlier version of this. So I guess that's why I was talking about borders. And so when you cut it, it would have the border with it. So I want to make them the same size. So I kind of don't like that these are different sizes. So I think what I'm going to do is actually go back and cut this out again. Maybe the better thing to do would make this one smaller. All right, so I'll cut this. And the reason it isn't small is because I did the selection, but I didn't do the edit tight select. Copy image, widgets, edit, paste as new canvas. And then now if you do that in this tool that I made, the next button only adds widgets to the screen if you delete the old one. So we delete this widget and there's nothing on the screen except this little tutor thing. Then when we go back and hit next again, now it copies them over. Okay. Run the script and this should become transparent and everything should work fine. They look about the same size to me. Doesn't matter if they're exactly the same, but I believe they are because we use the grid. So then the idea here is just the very simplest way to make Tic Tac Toe. After all that is just using the widget tool. Take this and just make copies of widgets, edit, copy widgets, edit, paste. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's turn those borders off. run. All right, so now we can just say, okay, well, I'm going to go here. And since I made so many copies, they're all stacked on top of each other. Now let's just do it like that. That's Tic Tac Toe. Like, that's really all you need for the most basic demo of this game. So you could do a whole lot with just no code at all. All of this could have been done with the menu. So everything we've done so far could have just been done with your mouse. So anyway, the reason that, let's go ahead and fill this out. Okay, next. Okay, so now going back towards what the demo game did, let's pick one of these and we're going to make it like the template, right? Go into widget mode. So double click on one and we're going to call this one CX. And we're going to click on one of the O's and call it CO. Okay. And then the others, and we only need 9 of them. We're going to put them in a little grid like I already have, but a little bit nicer. So make sure snap to grid is on and you can adjust the grid. If your particular size doesn't line up with this grid, you can either move this grid or, although it's on every card, so you have to copy and paste it. Or you can maybe wait till the end and then adjust the grid. But you can also just get it as best as you can. And then if it doesn't line up exactly, you can select and use the arrow keys to move the selection of widgets at one time and get it as close as you can to these squares. You do get little guides to show you when they line up, and that's very handy. Maybe one more pixel down or something like that. Good enough. Then add a field called which to hold the name of the widget to copy. Add the given click handler to the card script. It uses the copy and paste methods to copy the canvas image. Right, so now that we click on these, we're going to add a click handler to the card, and so that any of these canvases that you click on will trigger this code. Right now it doesn't do anything, first of all, because I'm not in interact mode, but also because all it does is define this function, and we have to actually invoke it, so we need to put it on the script so that when you click on it, it does it. So let's see what it does. So in an event handler like this, me is going to be the thing that got clicked on, or the thing handling the event. So if me.name is CX or CO, the two we just created, then we're going to set which.text to me name. So what is which? Well, that is the thing that we were supposed to create. So a new field, drag it over here, double click on it and call it which. We're going to make this hidden in a little bit. So for now, we can just leave it here. And then if it's one of these, then we're going to set the text of this thing to CX or to the name. Otherwise, we're going to get the text out of this thing and then find the corresponding widget. So which.text, which is going to be the text of this, we're going to grab the widget named with that name. So that's why we put the name into the field. So now we're clicking on one that isn't one of these. So click on this one. We're going to clear that canvas, and then me.paste will copy it over. So until we click on one of these, then you're going to see that just clicking on it is not going to find a widget. And so when it tries to paste, it's going to go empty. So all we have to do to clear these out is just use an empty string for the which here. All right. So I hit Control C to copy that. And then we're going to go to card script, and we're just going to paste that in there. So now the click handler is now running on the page, and back in interact mode, if I click, because this is empty, it's going to erase the contents. That's clearing, and then pasting doesn't do anything. But as soon as we type, well, we don't have to type it. We can click here, and we can see that clicking on one of these sets the person whose turn it is, right? So now we can click on any one of these and fill it in. So I think what we should do here is make them not draggable. So all of these, once they're locked in place, should not be draggable. So I'm going to click on these. Can I do it all in batch mode? Widgets can't. But what I can do when it's selected like this is I can say selection, selected. There we go. So just selected, and we can say each C in selected, and that'll loop through all of them. But we have to say C in here. Now we have each one of those canvases. We're calling it C, and we're just going to say C dot draggable equals 0. And now we can click on them, but they will not drag out of the way. Okay, I think is everything we need here. Next, on this screen I have the same thing, so I think we can also loop through it this way for each WN card widgets. If the type is canvas, then set it to draggable 0, and if they're not these two special ones, then we can clear them. So this script right here, when we run it, will first of all make them all undraggable, like I did, and then it will clear them. Right, so that's good. So let's copy that. But what we're going to do is we're going to put that on a button. So tool, widgets, widget, new button. and we just put it anywhere you want. Doesn't matter what you call it. I'm going to call it clear button. The text will be clear. And under the script, now on click, we're going to paste in everything that was in that script there. So we don't need to constantly be setting this to draggable. There we go. But that's it. Okay. So now click, 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 clear. Okay, that was our first challenge. All right, the next challenge is to take turns. Right now, you have to explicitly tell each person to click on their thing and then start drawing. And so it would be nice if we could instead switch automatically. So right now, if we run this line down here is saying card widget CX, which is this one, show, and set it to one of these random settings. So a widget can be, this one is solid. That seems to be none. Show invert, which I guess always is black and white. It also inverts patterns. And then that is solid. That's transparent. Okay. And then this part doesn't really do anything because what it does right now is assigning a variable called test. And that's why it says it needs fixing. Which text equals CX? Because this is not an assignment. This is a check, right? So when we assign, we always use this colon character. This is a check to see whether this is true, and it returns a 0 or a 1. So if we say CO, then that's true, or 1, right? So this is an assignment, and we're saying the result of this expression is going to be what is assigned to the text. So if the text is CX, that was the test, then we're going to set it to CX, LCO. So obviously that's backwards, and so the fix is to do this. Now, every time we click it, it'll toggle. So I guess, when do we want this to happen? I think we want it to happen, and it says when you click clear, because the X always starts first. So we don't necessarily want to switch it to another person. When you set clear, we want to just explicitly set this to CX. The way to do that, click on the widget mode, double click, script, and then right at the end of all this, we will say which text is going to be CX. So when we clear, we're always going to use the X symbol. And then on the card script, right after we click, we can put in this code. So interact mode, let's go ahead and copy that card script, I guess. And then I'm just going to go ahead and inline the variable. We want which text to be if which text is CO, then CX, LCO. There we go. So that should toggle back and forth. All right, and if we do that, that should complete this challenge. So let's try it. Okay. And I believe that pretty much brings us back to what we had at the start of the deck. Yes. So I'm making these lessons for my daughter, and she asked to have a computer player. So that is coming in the future. I did not want to overwhelm her or you guys with a gigantic lesson on like how to do a computer player, but we're going to work our way up to that over the course of some other videos. But in the meantime, if we go back to the first card, let's look and see if there's anything else on here that I have done. I think the main thing that's different is that I grayed out this box. I switched this. So what I do here, if we look at the card script, I think most of what we see here is pretty much the same, except rather than just explicitly setting the text of this field, which is now hidden, I'm calling a function called turn, which is swapping the turns, which is up here. We'll go to that in a minute. I also unlock the clear button, whereas when I click the clear button, I call this turn function. I pass in an explicit parameter saying which side I want to have the next turn, and then I lock it. And what that does is it allows me to hit the clear button, and then it locks this button. So that's a locked button right there. And when we click here, it unlocks it. And then meanwhile, not only is it setting that same field that is now just hidden, which we can turn it back on so we can see that the logic is the same. We can widget show solid, and then some toolbars. When we click on it, the logic is the same. In addition, it's choosing to hide or show those two canvases based on the value of that field. So the way that works is on the click handler, we do not pass in a value for side. So this is a function called turn that takes a parameter called side. And when we call it without a parameter, this defaults to a special value called nil. So first we're going to assign a variable called other, which is exactly what we did before. If CX is which text, we pick CO, else we get CX. So it just flips to the other one. But rather than assigning it directly, we assign it to side, which we are also assigning, right? So basically what this does is filling in a default value for side. So by default, we're going to switch to the other, right? So if we say x equals 5 in the listener, so I hit Control L to bring up the listener, Shift Enter to run it, you can see that the result is 5. So if I say 1 plus x colon 5, that gives me 6, whereas x is 5, right? So this is the assignment, and that assignment returns a value, which was the value that got assigned. So if I say side is nil, right? That's the special value. I ask what side is, it's nil. Now I can say x unless side, and I get 5 because I assigned x to 5. But if I now say side equals, 1, 2, 3, now I run that same thing again. I just click on it, x unless side. Now when I run it, I get 1, 2, 3 because I was getting x unless side was filled in. And so unless is an operator that allows you to do this like default argument kind of thing. And so those two ideas are working together. So basically this is saying if side is null, set it to other, and then otherwise we just use whatever you passed in. And so that allows us to explicitly set the value to CX when I hit the clear button, which if I click to switch it, now I hit clear, now we see it sets to CX because I explicitly passed that in the clear button script. And if I don't pass it in, then it does the toggle. And then after that, we just go through each of the two template widgets, CX and CO, and we set them both to show none, meaning we hide both of them. And then we pick the one that we've decided on, and then we set that one to transparent. So that turns it back on. And so that's how we switch the display here. So I guess there's kind of a lot going on in this function. I wouldn't expect a beginner to write code like this. This is compact, I guess what I'm saying is if this style of code is a little dense for you, then write it the way that makes sense to you. I try to keep it pretty simple on the individual steps of these tutorials, and then occasionally throw in a little bit of a more advanced style in the demos. Let me know what you think about that. I'm doing this for my daughter, but I'm also doing this for all of you. And if you like it, please let me know. And if you would like me to do things a little bit differently, please let me know that too. Because in the end, I want this to be something that people find useful. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.